Yo, what's up? It wouldn't really feel right to play, the Melee League and not make a Melee League starter. So here we are. Unfortunately, my days of League Start experiments have long since been fucking dead. Too many bricked League Starts that have ruined the first 3 days of League Start for me, which means I don't do it anymore, dog. It is what it is. So what you're gonna get is the tried, true, and tested Splitting Steel champion. Now, hold on, wait, hold on. I know what you're thinking. Champion was nerfed, Waff, like, are you sure about this? And it turns out, for Splitting Steel at least, we ended up with a side grade. Slightly more damage, a little bit less tanky. That's pretty much it, actually. The footage you're seeing in the background was a dry run, level 1, all the way to tier 10 maps. This is my usual campaign run I do for every League starter. If you want to see that process, go to Twitch, look at the VOD, you can skim through it. Now this specific footage is the full online mid-tier version. With this character, you should be able to clear Maven, you should be able to get all your 4 Void Stones and everything. So let's use this character as a comparison benchmark. Same gear, same stats, only adjusting for the changes in 3.25 with the skill tree and new gems. On the left, we have 3.24. On the right, we have 3.25. This is assuming 10 out of 12 projectiles, not all 12, full rage on both of them, and flask on, with cast wind damage taken Molten Shell. We're assuming that you're just blasting T16 maps trying to get rich, just like the rest of us. The effective HP difference is really just because we drop Grace, because we want more damage from Flesh and Stone. And yeah, it turns out that the difference was pretty marginal. I don't know if this was intended by Triple G or if this is just luck, but I'll fucking take it. Now, to give you a brief idea of exactly why and how this happened, well, one, the skill tree is actually a lot more comfortable to move around, and we have options. You can actually get more damage than this version I'm showing. This is the tankier version, and you can actually get up to 7.4 million or so with the same set of gear, just taking away a little bit of tankiness. The other reason is because they pretty much gave us a lot of sockets to work with and added a melee tag to literally fucking everything. Splitting Steel is technically not an actual melee skill, which means we're going to borrow some old tech. We're going back 5 years and we're just going to spam the adrenaline tech. This is basically Divine Blessing if Divine Blessing was actually ever fun or easy to use. This is an instant cast. During this demonstration, you can see I'm running around and I'm proccing it. You can literally activate it mid-attack. It lasts 20 seconds, it has permanent uptime, no cooldown. And as you can see from, the DPS numbers and everything like that, it is the biggest reason we mitigated the nerf completely. If you are brand new to Splitting Steel because you've been avoiding melee for the last 3 years, let me give you just a brief idea of exactly what's going on here. So you shoot Splitting Steel, it has 5 projectiles. After it hits a target, it splits 5 times. You use return projectiles, those come back and hit the same target. In theory, what we're going to do is add a ton of projectiles. We go up to 12 projectiles on the mid-tier version. I always assume 10 projectiles. Maven is a little thin, let's be real. I'm not totally convinced that all 12 would hit her. However, if you're fighting somebody like Dodre, who's, thick as a brick, then yeah, that bitch is absorbing all 12 for sure. But I always assume 10 because you never know what you're fighting. The other thing you need to know is that we are using a lot of uniques. The good news is that if you get all these uniques, you're going to have the same damage as me. Very straightforward, very simple. The only small bad news though is that Beltimber Blade on literally day 1 is over 100 chaos. If you go to PoE Ninja, you can always look up past unique prices on day 1, 2, and 3. And in this case, Beltimber is very, very powerful, very, very strong. So I did the typical game plan. I did a level 1 all the way to tier 10 maps. In my opinion, tier 10 maps with awful gear is completely doable with this build. It was last league. I think it's going to be even easier this league. And you make some money. Hey, if you got a cool strat, hey yo, share it with the class. I'm also a broke boy. I would like to get rich. And tier 10 maps gives you, more than enough points so you can do something. Essences, Expedition, Betrayal stuff, whatever one. You have enough points to make some money and go get your Beltimber Blade. From that point, finish the league, get rich, and if you want, I did add a even more expensive crit version. Now you always went crit with Splitting Steel. That was always the quote-unquote final version. Without T17s being in the game, I just felt like it was unnecessary to add something so expensive. But now that T17s exist, I figure you're probably going to want to go to the next step now. If you're a very, very new melee leveler, respect, ayo, welcome to the club. The note section is going to have most of the information you're going to need. Axes, rustic sash, blacksmith, that whole very simple explanation. In the note section, go glance at it, every 10 levels to see what base you're looking for. Now, the last thing I want you to know, real quick, is Maven. Now, Maven, definitely very doable, deathless, but you gotta be smart. Drop Leap Slam, take off Frostblink, run Flame Dash, faster casting, and Life Tap. It is in the POB, but I want to audibly tell you, do not Leap Slam over Maven Beams. It turns off your degen, and it made me restart several runs to get it right. Now, splitting steel is actually not too complicated. We don't really need to spend a ton of time here, to be completely honest. Let's just go over the quick, brief changes that were made to melee and, the new gems and such like that. The most important thing is, first things first, never take this off. This is to simulate return projectiles. Return projectiles does not do the math for us in POB. The skill gem is 61%, but that's not accounting for your first actual projectile. The first projectile does like 1.2 million damage or so. So it's somewhere around 52% less damage total. When you have your Beltimber Blade, then you turn this on. Beltimber Blade has 2 projectiles and far shot. Without Beltimber Blade, this doesn't exist, and without this, you lose a ton of damage. So, we're really abusing the return projectiles here for this. We are adding Flesh and Stone to the mid-tier version, so this is, not bait, not pad. This is legitimately actually here. It turns out if you want more damage, you can actually drop Grace because it's technically not more damage and you have to get better reservation. But if you drop Grace, you do end up with more damage because you can also fit in Herald of Purity. So if you want to be tankier, run Grace. If you want a little bit more damage, then run this setup. I think this is a good mix between tanky and DPS, so I would personally recommend the tankier version. Frenzy charges are from the Mark. Mastery, you have frenzy charges when hitting bosses. We are a life tap build, you have Onslaught from Perseverance Belt. And the last thing I'd mention is this, Rage. I do not know how much you're going to get. If you're fighting bosses, then maybe 15 is the max, and maybe you fit in Berserk. I didn't actually mention Berserk or anything because I'm not totally sold if this is going to be good or not. If you're fighting Maven and she's about to phase and you know she's about to phase, then sure, you can turn on Berserk, you'll get a big boost of damage. But also, if you're just mapping, then you're probably going to be at 30 rage because this build is too fucking fast. So it's really a feel thing. Just figure out what your average is, and then you can plug it in here and you'll be able to see your own DPS. Now, as usual, when the POBs are done, this is a sneak peek, I actually like color coding and making everything make sense. So you have the tankier version, the more damage version. If you were like, what's the more damage version? Then click this, then right here, switch to this one, more damage. It does it for you. So let's go here to entering maps. We'll go to Act 1 to 10, and let's just do a brief overview. I personally would just level with Spectral Throw these days. Do not level with Splitting Steel. Do not do it. It's terrible until you get return projectiles and mark on hit linked together. It's awful. It's awful, awful, awful. Do not do it. One big change you need to be aware of is that they did move this axe wheel. It used to be right here. Now it's over here. During my test runs, I did simulate how it would feel not having this for a while. And you pretty much just get it at the end of Act 3 rather at the beginning of Act 3 now, or maybe the beginning of Act 4. Not really a big deal, to be honest. It's out of the way, but then we're going to end up getting this stuff eventually, so not too big of a deal down the road. Because the removal of totems, it's better to actually add in a decoy totem. Decoy totem makes leveling in general very easy, and when you're playing a melee build, this is just going to make it even easier. So I legitimately would recommend that you run this. You could probably drop this by the time you hit maps, but up until then, it's actually kind of the MVP. It's going to hard carry you. Now this is the next step. This is leveling Resolute Technique. This is leveling Precise Technique. I did the same thing last league as a recommendation. People really liked it, so I just fine-tuned it again, and everything should be mostly the same. If you want to level as Resolute Technique, it's easier. You get a little bit more damage from your auras, but you get less damage in general because Precise Technique is definitely more damage. But Resolute Technique is easier. You're going to get more health, more armor, and you kind of just chill in this area. You'll have to respec more points later, but you can go Resolute Technique all the way to T10 maps. In my testing, I go Resolute Technique because I assume somebody's going to want an easier time to level. You can go Precise Technique. You're over here on the right side. You use less points to respec down the road, but you need to probably get a couple accuracy rolls somewhere. These accuracy wheels will help, but you also need to fit in something else. Accuracy on gloves, helmet, anywhere you can. And your goal is to keep your accuracy above your HP. If you have 3,000 health, then you need 3,001 accuracy, and that's it. This damage is more than worth it to work on the accuracy because accuracy is a suffix, so it's not like you're giving up damage, but you are giving up a res slot. So res becomes a pain in the ass, so that's why I recommend getting these res nodes or helping Alira. I am probably going to help Alira if I do league start this because the mid-tier version is just really striped on res, man, and leveling with Alira for 1 point, it's not bad. Double down on this and you can pretty much just get less and less res as you're leveling, have an easier time, or take the extra skill point. I probably wouldn't recommend getting Oak for the HP. It's kind of dog shit, to be honest, so I wouldn't bother. The mapping is the same concept. You're either going to stay Precise Technique and add more auras accordingly, or you're going to stay all the way deep into T10 maps doing Resolute Technique still. I would not recommend switching to dual wield or anything until you get the Beltimber and the Dream Feather together. I tried 2 Dream Feathers, I tried Dream Feather and Grellwood Shank, and it just ended up not really mattering. If I had stayed with 2-handed axes, it would have been fine. So save yourself the respec and just wait until you get a Beltimber blade and you should be good to go. Now let's switch to the mid-tier tanky, go over here to skills, make sure it's on the right one, mid-tier Beltimber Switch. Dream Feather benefits from evasion. If we are going Grace, this is really good, but without even having Grace, it's still just a good DPS weapon. The Beltimber Blade gives you 2 projectiles and far shot. This is pretty much mandatory for this build, especially for going dual wield in my opinion. Feel free to do however you want, but I don't like switching to dual wield beforehand. There's really not much to say here. You don't even need the reduced mana cost, that's extra. As far as I know, the physical damage taken is still in there and you're just getting life and capping your res. That is a bit higher HP than I would normally assume for League Start, but with them increasing the HP values all the way up to 140, 150, I feel like 115 is going to be the new 70, so somewhere around there. This is your pseudo 6 to 7 link. You do need Pierce, and this is just a very good early League Start 7 link. It's a good value, good armor, gets the job done, no problem. You could use a rare chest, but I think this is a little bit easier to use. You're going to probably try to get accuracy here and here. You really want that rage on hit. Rage is really valuable, especially when you're mapping, so this is one of the first things I'd want to do after I got my Beltimber. And you only need 1 suppression roll on these rares. You're only wearing 3 rares, so you know you're gonna have to make it work. But if you get that suppression fixed, you're good on suppression, and your tree is pretty much hard carrying you for suppression up here and down here, no problems. Now, Perseverance is how you get Fortify, and this is one of the biggest reasons we end up using this. Even if we're not evasion stacking, this still ends up being worth it just for the benefit of Fortify, and it's a pretty good belt in general. Now, obviously, it looks a little sus. We only have 4k life, 3900, but we do have 24k Fizz hit, 57 LE, with no flask, 19k, 47k. This is more than enough to get you your 4 Void Stones. It was last league, it will be this league, but if you wanted to be even tankier and you feel like your damage is more than enough, you can very easily just, you know, drop the jewel and go get like this white life wheel over here. And, you know, adjust your points accordingly. This is the biggest benefit for the version now, is that you have a lot more freedom. If you feel like 6 million DPS is enough, then, you know, go ahead and go for this. If I was playing this, then yeah, I would probably go ahead and get Bloodless. I totally understand a lot of people want the balance between, you know, damage and tankiness. So your effective health pool and everything is pretty good. But that's just the benefit of champion, and we're stacking, you know, max res, solo steal, you know, various sources. Now, here we are on the end game gear. Now, obviously, a lot of the information is just, you know, get a rare with, you know, stats and res and get non-channeling on it. So let's just go over the few things that genuinely you may just have no idea how they work. Paradoxica is our weapon of choice. The only thing significantly better than this would be just a massive, like 500 DPS, you know, weapon. Easier to just get Paradoxica here. Get your Fizz, get your crit. Blind is the best one, Impale isn't, and the Impale is local. It only works on this weapon, so it would be useless because you would still need to get the Impale chance maxed for your Beltimber Blade. So not really worth doing. Go ahead and get Blade if you want to min-max. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you get. Just try to get the Fizz and the crit. Nothing much to say on the helmet. It's a very straightforward, just generic helmet. The chest is suppression fractured, and you do need avoid elements if you want to go for Storm Shroud. This is a very straightforward, you know, essence spam or target the Fizz damage direction with the yellow juice for defense, and obviously you're just trying to get as high armor and evasion as you can. Not too complicated, but obviously everything's getting a little bit more and more expensive. You can drop those implicits for the Fizz damage stuff they're adding to the game. It may be worth it, it might not. As of recording this, they haven't released the numbers, so I do not know. These gloves are woefully just completely unnecessary. You can just get, you know, fractured life, roll it till, you know, get like okay attack speed, you know, lightning res, and then just craft pierce. If you wanted to make these are basically Unveil orbs. Get attack speed, ideally a res, prefixes can't be changed, and then you would Veiled Orb, and you would hope to hit Pierce there. Very unnecessary, but if you wanted to min-max, you know, this is obviously an option. Nothing to say about the boots. You do want Brittled Ground. We're a crit build, and we're basically standing on all the bosses and the mobs, so you just get a lot of crit from Brittled Ground. And Eternal Damnation, I tried not to run it. I tried to look at other options. They made too many changes to the game for me to just figure something out all of a sudden. So I'm just going to run with ED and anoint ambidexterity. Man, 7 times to say that word. Your rings are nothing special. You do need non-channeling because we are not life tapping anymore. But these are just generic, you know, fill your stats, nothing special, no damage on them. Generic flash setup, some crit on these, some gain charges when hit. And we are rocking the large jewel. You can get the one that gives res, and that would help your resing a little bit if you're actually having trouble. Eye to eye repeater, highest damage you're going to find. This is pretty much true, I think, for all projectile abilities, and I went with Prismatic Carapace. Once I pass the 12 million DPS mark, I usually just start looking for ways to get any kind of help on armor or defense. You also can just drop helping Alira. We are helping Alira in the lower end version. In my opinion, that's the most valuable, right? But at this point, get the extra skill point. You're probably going to want it for all these jewels. The rest of the skill tree is very simple. You're just getting crit where you can. You can try to modify this. I spent a lot of hours trying to fix this. For example, trying to find how I could drop this, and there's just really not a solution I found with. Maybe you're smarter than me and you can find it, but we just need this 10%, so I had to take it. This is the expensive part of the build, the Impale Watcher's Eye. I have no reference for how expensive this is going to be. It might be 10, might be 20, who knows. I don't know how many people are going to be playing Impale on League Start. I think everybody's going to be going slams, so maybe we can benefit on the cheap side because we're hipsters and just going to play, you know, safe smart. And then you've got the Storm Shroud to get our avoid elements capped. So if you're bossing, which ideally you're probably going to be bossing on this version, you're big chillin', no problems. And that is pretty much the entire character. Don't forget the notes section. Ideally, you have a good League Start, and that's pretty much it for me. Good luck, bud. Have a good one.